Here we go. Okay, great. So today's webinar, we're going to talk about 5 things to focus on to convert sales lead. And before we start, we thought it'd be nice to give you a little introduction about ourselves, Martin and myself. So let's go on to Martin. Would you like to introduce yourself, Martin?
Yeah, happy to. And hi, everybody. Thank you for coming along today, and thanks to Joyce for co-hosting with me, which is fantastic. So yeah, very briefly, I run a business, co-founder of a business called Sales Untangled, which I co-founded with a lady called Lynn Kennedy. And between us, we wrote Untangle Your Sales, which we launched earlier this year, which was an Amazon #1 bestseller, thanks to some great support from people we know and work with. For anybody who's interested, very topical this week with COP26 going on. We're a certified B Corp. We're running our business net zero, 29 years ahead of the government target. So it's not as hard as Boris says. And then in terms of sales credentials, I've worked for a number of businesses that you will recognize, like BBC, Reckitt Benckiser, GlaxoSmithKline, PepsiCo, to name a few, but also for a lot of small companies. And my heart remains with small companies. So lovely to meet you. And if you have questions during the day, please do use the chat box. Feel free to introduce yourselves if you want to. The chat box, it's there as a resource for everybody to use. So feel free to do that. And back to you. Thanks, Joyce.
Thanks, Martin. While we have people coming in, I'm just going to introduce myself. So my name is Joyce Ong, Marketing Tech. I think some of you know me already through my other webinars as well. So we run a marketing consultancy delivering 3 specific services. One of them is affordable mobile apps for SMEs, SEO, and also LinkedIn lead generation campaigns as well. So these are the 3 services that I focus on. The sort of clients that we work with are SME clients, as I mentioned. So it's a wide range of clients that I've encountered. They range from events, clients running events, event-related companies, to membership clubs, to coaches, and co-working spaces as well lately. Also e-commerce companies, working with them on SEO, and also building mobile apps for HR consultancies, staff recruitment and management company, as well as other professional services such as accountants. So it's quite a wide range of clients that we work with. So in my past corporate life, I used to work for JWT, which is J. Walter Thompson, now part of the WPP group. So I learned all about advertising and marketing from those early days. And my last couple of years in my corporate life, I worked for a bank, Credit Suisse, in Singapore and in Zurich, providing global marketing services to targeted at high net worth individuals there. So that's my corporate background experience. Okay, so moving on to the agenda. So we have a packed agenda today. We're going to talk about how you can use LinkedIn to strategically build your audience and use LinkedIn to generate qualified leads without the sales pitch. So I'll cover these 2 points, and then leading you on to Martin, who will talk about building a sales funnel that will help ensure that you track and convert sales leads. And of course, Martin will share with us those key questions that will help you to uncover needs from the client. And lastly, identify the sales and people skills that will help you as a business to convert leads to customers. So these 5 points we're covering there. And Martin, would you like to take over from here for the slide, just for the slide?
Yeah, sure. This is a real passion of mine around sales. I think so often people think that sales is a tactical thing that happens at the end of their commercial process. And I'm just really passionate about people thinking strategically about it and making some choices about who are we selling to and how are we going to sell it to them and what sort of approach are we going to take. So this is really saying, think about where you're going on your sales and your customer journey. And we'll give you some tips and tools today about how to do that. But think about where you're going, think about it strategically, and think about it early on in your commercial process.
Thanks, Martin. So moving on, how to use LinkedIn strategically to build your audience. Why LinkedIn? Well, LinkedIn, as we all know, is the world's largest social channel for professionals. And when LinkedIn started life, it started as a recruitment site for people looking for jobs and also for recruiters as well. But as we all know, it has evolved a lot since. And I'm going to share with you 3 reasons why startups and small businesses should learn how to use LinkedIn well to help them to generate qualified leads there. So first reason I will share with you is simply that Google loves LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has what SEO people would say, a high domain authority, which means Google trusts LinkedIn highly, just as Google would trust Facebook. So these 2 social media platforms have got a domain authority score of 98, 99, around that mark, out of a full score of 100. So if you ever notice that if you were to Google your name on Google, and if you do have a complete profile, it's optimized, your profile on LinkedIn quite often pops up at the top or near the top of your Google results. So that's one good reason why we should spend some time to optimize our profile on LinkedIn and to make sure that our profile speaks to our target audience there. The second reason is LinkedIn allows you to find decision makers from a wide range of industries. And this is a really powerful filtering tool that LinkedIn has. You can access this filtering tool just with a free version of LinkedIn alone. You don't really need to pay for a premium version. You can pay for the premium version, of course, if you want a higher degree of targeting. But just with the free version of LinkedIn alone, it allows you to search for people on your LinkedIn network according to locations, where they're from, the industries they are in, and this is a drop-down list of industries categories that are set by LinkedIn. You can also filter according to the services that they offer. If you're looking for people who are specifically web designers or graphic designers, the service category of LinkedIn allows you a finer level of filtering. Also, you can find people who are in the same association as you. For example, if you're looking for a whole list of FSB members there, then obviously you could filter FSB members from your LinkedIn networks. So the whole point of this is it's a powerful tool that you can use to find your prospective clients there. There's no need for you to spend advertising dollars to find your audience. So that's really helpful for businesses with a really tight marketing budget. You can use the LinkedIn filtering tool for free. Google pay-per-click, as we know nowadays, can be really, really expensive for us to generate any qualified leads there. In fact, for my industry alone, to use Google pay-per-click ads, the average cost to get a qualified lead from pay-per-click, just to give you an example, could be a couple of £100, anything from £300 to £800 onwards to actually get a qualified lead, a warm lead using Google pay-per-click for my industry. So that gives you a perspective of how expensive it can be with paid advertising if you don't really have a budget for it. The third reason for using LinkedIn is LinkedIn, if you've noticed a couple of years ago, LinkedIn was really not, it's quite a sleepy social media platform in those days. And at one point, it looks as if it was at risk of being resigned to the dust heap of social media platforms, so to speak. But Microsoft, a couple of years ago, Microsoft took over from LinkedIn. And since then, there has been a whole host of really exciting new marketing-oriented features on LinkedIn, which we can really use to help our business. So these features are, for example, LinkedIn events, LinkedIn stories that has been taken down already, unfortunately, LinkedIn cover story, which is my favorite. So essentially, cover story allows you to record a 30-second video about you and your business, anything you want to say there. And the amazing thing about this tool is it's on your headshot. So that's the first thing people will see when they land on your LinkedIn page. And you can chop and change your LinkedIn video as and when you like to suit your campaign, to suit your message for that campaign. So that's a really powerful tool there. LinkedIn polls, we may have seen a lot of polls on LinkedIn. They do get quite quick engagement as a LinkedIn feature. And also other really cool tools, I think, such as audio messaging, using Zoom or MS Teams. If you've ever noticed, you go onto your LinkedIn message box, your inbox on LinkedIn, you see in each message box, there is a device for you to connect to Zoom. So you can generate a quick Zoom link from there, or MS Teams as well, to connect to someone on video. And very recently, LinkedIn has also introduced a LinkedIn video feature to compete with Zoom. So from all accounts I've heard, the LinkedIn video feature is actually better than Zoom. So these are really cool features that you can use on your LinkedIn and also your messaging, your LinkedIn messaging inbox. And also an audio message. It's always nice to, for a change, to leave a little audio message on using your LinkedIn inbox. That's a more personal touch, I think, compared to just sending straightforward messages there. So there's just different ways of connecting one-to-one and one-to-many on LinkedIn. So it's fantastic ways to engage there. So top tips to build your audience. I'm going to share with you a couple of top tips. I have been LinkedIn on, oops, apologies. I have been on LinkedIn for a long time, but I haven't actually harnessed the power of LinkedIn until several years ago when I started focusing more on using LinkedIn to help me with my business. So I'd like to share with you four of my tips here on how you can strategically grow your audience on LinkedIn to make it work for you. So first is quality versus quantity. And that, I think, applies to other social media platforms as well. It's good to always have a plan in mind and a call to action for each and every one of your content, whenever you put out content there on LinkedIn. You don't always have to plan your LinkedIn content well in advance. It's good, however, to have an idea of what sort of content you're putting out for that week and whether that is going to gel with your marketing plans or not. So I would admit that I don't really have a 6-month plan in advance, but I do have an idea of what sort of content I want to plan for the next week or two on LinkedIn, and how that's going to tie in with my campaigns, my marketing campaigns for that period of time. And don't be afraid to test your content to see what works and what doesn't work. The last thing I'll say is consistency. Consistency is always key. So showing up for your connections. It's always better to set a plan to post once a week, twice a week, or 3 times a week consistently, rather than posting every day for a month and then not posting anything for the next 3 months. That's not going to help your LinkedIn, help you to generate an audience or to talk to your LinkedIn or engage with your LinkedIn audience. Secondly, I'm going to talk about finding the right audience. I think some of us, and this applies to me as well, may find that we do already have our connections, our first degree connections on LinkedIn, but quite often they are people that we have encountered through our working life, our career, for example. They may or may not be the right audience at that point in time for us. So for example, for me, I came from the corporate world years ago. So all my contacts were very much from the corporate world. And when I switched over and started running my own business, became self-employed, I realized that those old contacts of mine were not quite my right target audience, if that explains. And therefore, I realized I needed to really build a whole new audience altogether. And so it's for that reason, it's important to look at what you already have, your first degree connections that you've already built up, and see if any of them would sort of fit your right target audience profile. And you might find that chances are they may not fit. Not all of them will, in which case it's important to then think in a strategic fashion to see how you can actually reach out to your second-degree connections or your third-degree connections on LinkedIn to try and engage with them, to try and connect with them. So this is what I mean by being very intentional and very strategic with with building your LinkedIn connections there. You may find it sometimes if you do a search on LinkedIn for connections, your target audience may not even be on LinkedIn as well. So, so it's always good to have a look at the network of connections that you have. And the other thing is, so filtering is one way of finding out who are your target audience and whether they are there, and then reaching out to them and inviting them to connect. But of course, we also connect with, as human beings, we connect with people organically as well. So we can, I would suggest, of course, we shouldn't stop doing that. We should continue to invite our clients, people that we work with, invite them onto LinkedIn if they are there, and also people that we've met or people that we've spoken with at events or our one-to-one sessions, to also invite them to connect. So it's a combination of being strategic about who we want to invite and also organically connecting with people that we've interacted with. So what do we do once we've connected with these people? The way to engage with our audience, the audience that we've strategically and organically built up, there's several ways we can do that. And I would say that the approaches to content creation isn't very different really from the way we would connect with people on Instagram or on Facebook. Perhaps the format that we use to connect with these people and to engage with these people may differ. But I would say ideas such as sharing your story, your backstory about how you started, asking for help, for example, that always garners a lot of response. People are always willing to share advice or to give their opinions if you ask them to. Share your insights, your business insights. Also, a fantastic way to engage is to share your reviews, the reviews that you've had on Google or elsewhere, testimonials as well, discuss the customer pain, or people that you collaborate with at events. So for example, Martin and I were running this event together. So of course, I'll post news about our webinar, and I'll tag Martin in as well. So it's good to tell people who you're collaborating with, and that's one good way of getting more engagement there. And also don't forget to comment, like other people's posts, and also tag relevant people. That's one way to get more engagement faster. You can't always control when your post is going to land on somebody else's feed. That's not something that you can control, but you can certainly hasten the process of getting engagement faster by tagging people you think might be interested in your content there. Sometimes you may find that the people who comment or like your posts are not actually connected with you. They're not your first degree connections there, in which case it's always good to have a quick run through of who's been engaging with you. And if they are second or third degree connection, then I would extend my invitation out to these second, third degree connections and invite them to connect with you. You don't know if they're going to buy from you. Of course, we're still far away from that point, but you do know one thing, that they actually like your profile, or there's something about your content that they like. So it's always good reason to reach out to them and invite them to connect there. The last and fourth point I'm going to mention is your profile. So couple of things I want to share about your profile, which is when you start to optimize your profile to complete the sections on your LinkedIn profile, make sure your profile speaks to your audience. Think of the keywords that you want to use in your profile, and of course make sure that your profile is optimized for mobile. That's really important, and I've seen a lot of LinkedIn profiles where it's not really optimized for mobile. The banner, the LinkedIn banner that people upload, it looks fantastic on a PC or a laptop screen, but you find that sometimes it doesn't look that great on a phone screen. So just bear in mind, you're typically going to get maybe 50%, if not more than 50% of your LinkedIn traffic using LinkedIn on their phone. So it's important to make sure that these elements such as your banner, the picture on your banner, your logo, your text, if your text is right next to your image, it can sometimes be hidden by your headshot on your banner. So it's important to make sure that these elements look equally good on your mobile. So I would optimize my LinkedIn profile to suit my phone. That would be the first thing I'll look at. And of course, things such as your headshot, your title, your first name and your last name, that's really important. And also a 3-line description on your phone is really important. Those are the first 3 lines that people will see. So it's important to max out those 3 lines on a phone, make sure that it spells out exactly what you do and how you can help your audience there. So I would say pay attention to these elements. These are the things that people will see in the first 5 to 10 seconds of landing on your profile. The other thing I want to mention is in terms of the content, if someone lands on your profile, the featured section of your profile is really useful. So that is essentially like the highlight on your Facebook or your Instagram. So these are curated posts. These are the posts that you want people to be looking at. So I would say to update the featured section in your profile often and make sure that it's got posts that you want people to see first and foremost before they even scroll down to look at your content down below. A couple of things to note here. So I hope that's useful in terms of your profile and also how to build your audience there. I'd say, obviously there's a lot more to that. If you want to know a bit more about how you can do this, then please do feel free to get in touch with me. If you'd like me to go over your profile with you, I'm happy to schedule a one-to-one for us to discuss that. So next, I'm going to go on straight to using LinkedIn, how you can use LinkedIn to generate qualified leads without the sales pitch. So a couple of tips I want to share with you here, and this applies to B2B as well as B2C type businesses. And you can use the free version of your LinkedIn account to do that as well. If you don't have the paid version, the free version of LinkedIn works just as well. So a couple of things to share with you. First, expand your network. So the thing to do is as I mentioned earlier on, if you feel that you need to expand your network because your first degree connections do not represent, for example, the sort of target audience profile that you want to connect with, who possibly may buy from you in the future, then the next thing to do is to try and expand your network there and invite second or third degree connections who fit your audience profile. So by that, I mean more or less demographics of your audience profile, where they're from, the industry they're in, their job title, for example, the services that they are offering. So these are the parameters, so to speak, that you could filter your audience with. And once you have a list of these people who more or less fit your audience profile, you can then reach out and invite them to connect. So there are a couple of reasons you could use to connect with them. One could be they are local businesses around you. It's always a good reason to connect. The second reason could be you both would have mutual connections. So you find that with a second degree connection, you quite often would share one or two at least mutual connections there. Again, a good reason to connect. or you too may have a membership to the same professional networks, professional club, networking club that you belong to, in which case that always gets you a higher response rate. So you'd be quite surprised if you do connect with people that way. You can typically get at least about 30 to 50% of the people that you invite to connect will connect with you if you give them a reason to connect. The second thing I'll do is to test your offers with your right audience. So the next step after you've connected with them, you could start testing an offer. At that stage, you don't know if they might be interested in your offer. So it's good to run a campaign, a direct messaging campaign using your LinkedIn inbox to message them. So you could offer some sort of value to a select group. So I would suggest to test with a small group of your audience. Once you've selected that audience, filtered them down, to offer something of value to them. Something that probably doesn't take you very much time to create unless you already have that value at hand. And this could be, for example, useful checklists that you might want to share with them, a questionnaire that you have to assess their needs there. Could be a download that you want to share with them, or even to organize an event that you could share with them on LinkedIn. So these are really good ways for them to invite them to engage with you. And I would then set up a short LinkedIn direct messaging sequence, typically no more than 2 or 3, with a call to action. So the call to action is really, as I mentioned, the value that you're offering to them, inviting them to download a checklist or a questionnaire, fill in a questionnaire, or to join in an event. So that's your call to action there in your DM sequence. And of course, don't forget to collect details from those who have actually taken up your offer. So that's your little test there. And the people who have signed up and given you a little bit of their information there, these would be your warm leads, so to speak. I would also say to involve your existing first degree connections. So if you've already got your first degree connections that fit the profile of people that you'd like to engage with, don't forget to run a campaign to re-engage them as well. Typically with first degree connections, you'll get a higher response rate compared to a campaign sending messages out to second or third degree connections, of course. So don't forget your first degree connections there. These could be 2 separate campaigns that you're testing, one with your existing connections where you're re-engaging them. A second type of campaign would be to your second or third degree connections, where you're reaching out, widening your audience, and then offering them something of value in order to get their warm leads, to generate warm leads from there. And the last thing to do, of course, is to run the DM campaign to get qualified leads. So once you've tested your offers, you sort of have a good idea what works, what doesn't work. You've tweaked your messaging a little bit, perhaps tweaked your offers as well. You can then roll this out to a wider segment of your audience, or invite more of your second or third degree connections there to interact with you, to engage with you. And of course, monitor your campaign performance and to make sure that you've got a plan in place to, once you've run the campaign, you've captured some leads there, you've got a plan in place to actually convert your qualified leads to sales if they're ready there to buy from you then. If they're not ready to buy from you, and then you've got a plan in place to actually continue to engage with your qualified leads. And you can do this on LinkedIn through the content that you post to your audience, or you can then you can also nurture them in a mailing list if they're not ready to buy from you then. At that point, I'll mention that Martin, of course, will be filling you in on the sales conversion process. So this is all part of your sales and marketing funnel. Right. Okay, so moving on. Just want to share.
Joyce, sorry, Joyce, can I just say at that point, I know you're going to describe some examples now, which will be great. So, but we're just halfway through now. So I just wanted to invite everybody, if you want to, at this point, start thinking about questions. If you've got any questions about LinkedIn for Joyce, drop them into chat and we'll capture them and we'll filter them for later in the event. Thanks for that.
Great. Thanks, Martin. How much time have we got?
It's by my dodgy computer clock, it's exactly past now.
Exactly past. Okay, great. Okay. Just two case studies I'd like to share with you. The first case study we've done of a LinkedIn campaign that we've run is a networking club. So we ran a campaign. It's an ongoing campaign. The goal of the campaign is to get non-members to visit a networking meeting and then to consider taking up membership there. Right. So with this campaign, this is an ongoing campaign. We reached out to 1,147 new connections. So these are second, third degree connections. They were approached over a period of 1 month. And this is a tested offer. I have to say the offer that we had was the invitation to visit a meeting, a networking meeting. So out of these, we had 29% people responded, they accepted the invitation to connect there. And out of the 1,147 people, we had 2% or 22 people actually sign up to attend a networking meeting. So we captured their data in a sign up form. And we had these 22 people sign up to attend our networking meeting. To sum up, we had 22 qualified leads or warm leads, so to speak, and these are decision makers who are actually interested in attending one of the weekly meetings that we conduct. It's a very well set up sales process for this networking club. So we do know that we do have an average conversion rate of 5 to 1. So out of every 5 people who have actually visited each meeting, we typically would get 1 new member there, converting from a visitor to a member. And from there, we can expect from the 22 visitors who visit, we can expect to receive 4 new members there at £658 per membership. So that's to give you an idea of an ROI that you can generate from a campaign, a LinkedIn campaign, using second and third degree connections there. So the next campaign, and this is a campaign that's already completed. It's in the past. The goal of this campaign that we ran for a co-working space was to get local businesses in and around that co-working space to take up a free trial day. So it gives them the opportunity. The offer is to give them the opportunity to experience a new co-working space, have some free coffee on them, spend the entire day there if they want to, just try out the new space with a view to renting a desk or a room in the future. So this campaign was run over a period of 2 months, 721 new or second, third degree connections of the business owner. We approached them over a period of 2 months. We had 37% response rate. So 37% of these people accepted the invitation to connect. And out of the 721, we had 2%. Again, 2% seems to be the average percentage response for new connections there. So we had 14 people who have actually expressed an interest in visiting now. And then the rest of the, we had a whole bunch of other people who have expressed some interest in visiting in the future. Just to sum up, we had 14 qualified leads, people who are interested in the space, co-working space now, and these were from local businesses in and around that co-working space. I think that's it from me. I shall at this point hand over to Martin. But before I do that, I think it's important to mention that all of these activities take place online on LinkedIn. And so the marketing campaigns that we've been running, the audience that we've been building, they're all on LinkedIn. But at this point, it's important to mention that to complete the sales process, to convert, in order to be able to convert these qualified leads into actual customers, we need to then take these people offline into a sales-oriented discussion. And that's where Martin would take over at this stage. So just to sum up, invest in LinkedIn if you want to consistently generate qualified leads for your sales activities. Find a cost-effective alternative to expensive paid advertising if you have a tight marketing budget. And of course, to save you some time, you can always automate your outreach campaigns there in order to generate these leads. I'll pop a couple of links in the chat box if you want to get in touch with me to find out more about my training sessions. At this stage, I'm going to hand over to you. Thanks for listening, and over to you, Martin.
Great, thanks, Joyce. Lots of useful ideas in there, and the case studies are particularly relevant. So am I going to start screen sharing now?
Oh, okay. So let me just stop this.
Okay, that should be ready. So yeah, as a reminder to everybody where we are on the agenda, we've handed over during that point, really, the third point on the agenda, about sales funnels, two real world examples about sales funnels, which is really helpful to help understand how does a LinkedIn campaign, or any other campaign for that matter, come together in the real world, and how do we start to think about that from a sales funnel perspective. Okay, if we got somebody enter the room. And so I'll just carry on that theme, really, about sales funnel. So a sales funnel, this is a really simple sales funnel with just 4 steps in it. And I think the examples Joyce gave were perhaps a little bit more complicated than that. But effectively, we find a way of generating leads, whatever that source might be. And Joyce has described today about LinkedIn as one of those possible sources. A very interesting question in the chat box about that, about, well, how do we compare how would we compare leads generated by LinkedIn to, say, leads generated by email? So there are all sorts of ways you might do it. But a very simple sales funnel might say, what about we get a suspect, we get prospects, we get proposals, and we get a sale? I take on the chin anybody who says it's much more complicated than that in my world, Martin. It probably is, but this is a really simple example. So introducing a business called City Yoga, who are based in London, and they run business-to-business yoga classes. So their sales target is pretty much HR managers, that sort of person, well-being managers, people looking after teams of people. And the 3 business founders, they're an established business that are turning over 120,000. Effectively, they've got 2 part-time salespeople and 1 part-time marketer, but that's because the 3 of them are running their business and they're busy, and so they're doing sales and marketing in their spare time and trying to find the energy in the space to do those things. So they're thinking about, okay, so who are our suspects? Who are our targets? Is it any company in London? We could be anybody in London might want to buy from us. But quickly, as they start that conversation, they think, well, there might be some types of businesses that are too small. Maybe they're not big enough to want to run yoga classes. There might be some that are too big and they've got a big corporate provider that we can't compete with. There might be some that are completely the wrong type of business. So, for example, maybe we don't think builders or electricians would be the best target market for us. So we start to filter it down quite quickly. And this goes back to what Joyce was saying about being clear about who we're trying to get to, who we're trying to build as an audience. And so from that, we can then start to think, City Yoga can start to think, okay, so who's a suspect? And as we start to think about the leads that Joyce or whatever other means we've used as lead generation, how do we identify those leads? What criteria do we attach to them? So in the case of City Yoga, we're saying, what does a suspect look like? How somebody we suspect might want to do business with us. So for City Yoga, after a lengthy strategy meeting, they decided that it's somebody we've connected with. So first off, we've got to have some sort of connection with some means of identifying them. It's not enough just to say we want to work with company X down the road. And we think that they might need our services. So it's not a tiny company who's never going to run yoga classes. It's somebody who might, in theory, be interested in that sort of service. So they're starting to attach some criteria at that level of the sales funnel. And so then if they move to the next level of the sales funnel, and we say, okay, so what's the prospect look like? How is the prospect different from the suspects that was at a higher level? And in this case, City Yoga, we're saying, actually, we had a conversation. Now, it might be an email conversation, it might be a LinkedIn conversation, it might be a face-to-face, it could be anything, but it's a conversation which we've chatted with that prospective client about their aims. Why do they want to hold the program? About their budget, indicatively. We haven't pinned down the price, but we've spoken indicatively what sort of budget and roughly when do they want to go ahead. So if they said, we're interested, but it's going to be 2 years away when we move to a new office, they might not be a prospect. But if they're saying, actually, it's people coming back to the office now, working from home, is winding down, we might look to do something in the next 3 months. That's interesting. It's a prospect. So it's qualifying what justifies us calling that particular lead a prospect at this stage. this is probably the stage that is the most self-evident, because I'm sure everybody here knows what a proposal or a quote is. So at this point, City Yoga is saying we've funneled all that stuff down to a specific proposal. It might be one or two proposals. We might give the client a choice, but a specific proposal with a price. So we can say, this is the budget, this is what we're going to do for you, and this is how much it will cost. So that's a quote or a proposal. And finally, again, getting to the sale. And now for City Yoga, and I would probably support their thinking, this is one where we've been paid, or at least had a deposit, or at least had a purchase order if we're going to big organizations, and we've started work. So why would you take it that far? Why would you not just say, somebody told us yes, and we'll count that as a sale? Because I'm sure everybody on this call has experienced somebody who said yes and been full of enthusiasm, and then for whatever reason changed their mind. So they're saying, actually, we want to see some indication that this business is going to go ahead. So what's really critical coming out of this is, okay, so how do we capture that? How do we capture that information? So first of all, we have to establish the criteria, the criteria that we've just described in this case, and how do we capture it and how do we measure it? So for City Yoga, and this goes back a little bit to what Joyce was describing in terms of the conversion rates at different stages of the funnel. City Yoga is saying, for those suspects, people we think they might like to work with us at some point, actually only 1 in 5 converts to a prospect. So only 1 in 5 do we get to have a meaningful conversation with them about what they're trying to do, what they're hoping to achieve through the program. From there, 1 in 2, we'll progress through that conversation to issuing a quote, sending out a proposal for them. So it's a reasonable conversion rate at that level. And actually beyond that, better than 1 in 2, 60% of those proposals convert to sales. So that's quite a good conversion rate. There are some industries that are much worse than that, and some businesses are much worse than that. But that's a reasonable conversion rate, and not a unrealistic one to have for this sort of business. So that gives you sales funnel metrics, a means of measuring it. And the question that drops out of that is, how am I going to measure it? Do I put it in a CRM system? Do I do it in a spreadsheet? Do I do it on a whiteboard on the wall? There are various ways of doing it. I think it's to some extent driven by the quantity of leads that you might have. So if you are a business like ours, we might have 10 or 20 clients at any point in time. Honestly, it's not that difficult to evaluate this in a spreadsheet. But if you had hundreds of clients, hundreds of customers, people buying 1 month, not buying the next, people coming in, coming out, then you might want a CRM system that helps you capture this. So, the HubSpots or whatever of this world that might do the job for you. So today isn't the place to go into lengthy conversations about comparing CRM systems, but the tool isn't important. The important thing is the challenge that you do it and have some sense about how effective are my conversions, how effective are my sales activities. Okay, so moving on to the fourth subject for today, and that's asking questions that identify needs. So this really picks up the theme that Joyce introduced us to, which is how do we sell, but sell without the hard pitch and without the hard sell. So if you ask for sales questions on Google, you'll get all sorts of sales questions. I can promise you, if you Google it, you'll get sales tricks, you get clever sales techniques that people think have pulled one over on the buyer. If you search for sales methodologies, you'll probably get different questioning techniques, different ways of selling. So this is not the definitive answer.
Sorry, Martin. Yeah, I think there's a lag in your voice. Maybe you want to turn off your video for time being. Okay.
Do people want to just let me know? Just let me know in chat if it's causing a problem or not, and I will turn off the video if it helps.
Yeah, I don't know if it's affecting others. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I apologize for disappearing then in that case. So I'll disappear off the screen just to try and make it a little easier. Okay, so fingers crossed. Yes, yeah, thanks, Sangeeta. Yeah, it's breaking up apparently. So I'm breaking up. Okay, all right, so moving on to questions and thinking about questions. So as I said, there are various ways of doing this. This is just a perspective on it. And this is a way of us helping to move customers to a sale without pitching too hard at them. It's a questioning technique. So why would we do it that way? Well, our aim is to get customers to mobilize one way or another. We want them to do something different after we've presented to them. And to do that, we need to give them a solution. In order to present a solution, we've got to find a need. There's only a solution that matches a need. And to be able to uncover a need, we have to be able to establish with somebody new both credibility and trust. two things, credibility and trust. So the questioning technique helps us establish that in a way that isn't pitching. So here's one way you can go about doing this, which is 6 questions, which more or less go in a flow. Actually, I've got 7 on the bottom of that. You can ignore the bottom one for today's purposes. So 6 types of question: curiosity, credibility, diagnosing now, uncovering implications, expanding needs, and creating solutions. So we'll talk about those 6 briefly. So in terms of curiosity, and this is about just prompting a customer, a potential customer, being politely provocative, obviously being polite, but prompting them with something. So I would say, look at all the big stories that are happening in the news. What's the stuff that everybody's talking about that's getting headlines at the moment? And pitch a question around that relates back to the industry you're talking about. So for example, at the moment, we all know there's this whole working from home thing going on. Are people going to go back to work? Employers want them back. People don't want to go back. So it could be a question about, I'm seeing all this in the news about the gap between how much people want to come back to work or how enthusiastic people are about coming back to the office, whereas employers seem to be pushing it harder. What's your perspective on that? How is that impacting your business? What approaches are your team taking? So just questions that it's based on partial information. It's like a snippet of value, but it's prompting the individual you're talking to stop doing the stuff they automatically do, because if we're all really busy and we're all just carrying on, effectively following the herd, doing the thing we do, and somebody asking one of those questions might just interrupt that thought process. We can then follow up on that with shorter questions that demonstrate our competence. Now, this is quite challenging because most of us, probably by nature, want to tell people what we're good at, pitch or present, and asking questions is a more subtle way of doing it, but it can be very powerful in getting feedback from clients. So we might ask follow-up questions like, what types of yoga are you familiar with? Or how do you see mindfulness fitting into this sort of program? Or how does your employer insurance work? So it's an operational question about how it works. The last question, what level of take-up do your employee programs have? So they're questions where we're demonstrating that we know what we're talking about, but we're doing it through questions. Obviously, we receive answers. So it's not a pitch, but it's demonstrating our expertise through short questions. The third step in the approach is thinking about big picture questions that relate to the subject. So imagine we're now talking to the HR manager. What's the most significant issue you're facing about people coming back to the office? What do you want to accomplish from this program? To what extent is employee well-being important at the moment? How has that shifted in the last 12 months, 18 months? So it's just questions that are big picture questions around the well-being topic, not specifically about yoga classes yet, as you'll notice. It's much more big picture than that. And then as we get answers to those questions, we can then follow up with implication questions. And you'll notice many of these questions are about stakeholders, so stakeholders from the perspective of the HR manager's desk. So what would happen if, or how does this affect your internal processes, or what impact is people working from home having on your customers or your customer service or your market share? So questions about implications. A great one is how, if you're not talking to the owner of a business, how does the board feel about this? How would the directors treat this? So it's starting to ask those implications questions, which in the mind of the person you're speaking to is starting to get them to think, actually, there are implications for me not fixing this. There are reasons why I need to take a choice and make action. And then we can start to move with step 5, expanding needs, and starting to explore what exactly is in the mind of the buyer. So things like what have you tried before? What have you looked at so far? What are the choices you're considering? What are the other alternatives you're thinking about? Who else are you talking to? How many people are on the shortlist? You might even get into questions about, I know you won't want to tell me exactly, but indicatively, what's the budget for this sort of work? So you can start to get into these expanding needs and trying to flush out from people what's in their heads. What did you do that worked last time? What was the best thing you did about the previous program you did? What didn't work? What didn't work so well? What would you want to change? So it's trying to get closer towards the details of what's in their head and what they think they like and what they think wants to look different, which inevitably takes us on to the 6th and final stage, which is creating the solution. So it may well be hypothetical, but obviously heading towards some sort of reality. And so what might the perfect solution look like? We've chatted for a while. What sort of program is going to be ideal for you? If you had endless budget, what might the program look like? What can I show you that help resolve this for us today? How might you proceed? What's your purchasing procedure? If you can do this as a, I mean, you can pitch at this point and say, here's my presentation. This is what I thought we might do. But if you can draw something out for them on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper that looks like you're co-creating a solution, having had this conversation, it's a much more powerful way of doing it. So a really neat way of it's a very quick run through, but a really neat way of pretty much getting your customer to define what the quote looks like and the proposal looks like without having to pitch at this stage. You just quote, you've got question, and they have more or less told you exactly what they want to achieve, what shape it's going to come in, more or less what budget it's going to come in, when they want to do it. And you just have to write that up in a quote and send it to them, get them to say yes. So if only it were that easy. So that's really a questioning approach. And finally, the last thing, and just this is moving on to sales and people skills that help you convert leads. Now, this is inevitably a really, really quick snapshot. It's just one perspective really on that subject. There is so much to talk about creating job specs, identifying the skills that you want in your business and the behaviors you want in your business. Creating job interviews, doing criteria-based questions, blah, blah, all that sort of stuff, which we haven't got time to touch on today. We can maybe cover on a different date, but for another day. So I just wanted to touch on one subject today, which I think flows on from what we've talked about in terms of pitching without pitching too hard, without really hitting people hard. How do we encourage people to say yes to a sale? And so there's a way of thinking about salespeople which splits them into hunters and farmers, or the farmers or nurturers, as they sometimes get called, but basically hunters and farmers. And very quickly, you'll start to think about people you know who fit one of these. You'll see very quickly think. So a hunter typically enjoys the pursuit of new business, and great networkers, strong influences, very motivated by getting the deal, like to work independently, are happy to be measured and judged on their own results, but probably want a big bonus that goes with it. And so it's a very pacey, can be quite selfish way of selling. And this is a Hollywood way. If you ever see anybody in Hollywood in a film, this is the way that Gordon Gekko will be selling, or whoever else is selling in that sort of environment. But sales is also made up of people who are farmers, nurturers, and they're much more about long-term relationships, very much about service ethics, sense of loyalty. They can be really good team players, very much about looking after customer service. And they could be quite upset if a customer said no to them. They might think, well, I've upset somebody. I didn't mean to do that. So very different people. And likely to be quite loyal employees, maybe motivated less by money, more about personal development. So you can identify those two people, and if you can instantly see other people, I think, oh, okay, I know somebody who looks like one of those or the other. Then the follow-up question is, okay, which one do you think you are? Because some of you will be listening to this thinking, oh yeah, that's me for sure. That's what I'm, one or the other, and that's a really, really important question to think about. So neither of these is better or worse. If you get into large organizations, lots of them will have teams of people that do both of these jobs. So there may be a team of people that are hunters, new business, and business development, however it's titled, and then a team of people who are sales or customer service, however, again, that's titled. So businesses might have both. One isn't better than the other. The worst thing you can be is a farmer who thinks you're a hunter. Because if you mistitle yourself or want to believe you're something else, you'll find it really hard. You find hunting really hard if it's not in your nature. And so the question really coming out of this, first of all, is how do you want your business to be? Do you want going right back to the start of today and what Joyce introduced us with? Do you want your business to be a hard-hitting, punchy lead generation organization, or do you want your business to be a loyal, longer-term relationship nurturing type of business? It almost goes back to the very heart of what you want you and your business to be about, and that sort of determines. So then, do I want to be more hunting, more farming? The question, as I've just said, comes out of that. So what am I best suited to, and what does my business best need? So we can then start to think about, if you've got a business that really does need hunting right now and you're not the hunter, maybe you can outsource, maybe you can partner, you can find other ways of getting somebody. So this is a really simple diagrammatic just to think about that. So at the bottom left hand side, if you're selling existing products to existing markets, you're probably weighting towards nurturing and keeping things nudging along. If you're in the top right of new products and new markets, you're probably nudging towards hunting, and you probably need to open a lot of new doors. And either of those other boxes, it depends. It depends on where your business is at any point in time, and the type of business you are, type of business you want to be. So as I said, there's a really quick thought about the type of salesperson you might be, the type of salesperson you might need, and all coming back to this question about, so do you want to use lead generation as a really driving lead generation engine, or do you want to use it as a subtle relationship building way of going about things? And so that takes us to the end of the presentation piece, and we have just got time for questions if anybody would like to ask a question. Joyce, there was a question that I did see a question further up, which was from, I'm scrolling back up now, from Venkat.